Hello, and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast is number 1476. The topic is Q&A, and the title is, Do Machine Leg Extensions Build Muscle? So one of my clients, we actually do, with all of our clients, we do an online journal. And what happens, it's basically a Google Doc. It's a live Google Doc. So the clients can go in there and write any questions or any thoughts they want. And then I get a notification that they wrote something. So then I jump in there and answer the questions. And we do that every single week. It's super fun, really good way to do like one-on-one connections and really help kind of, like I was telling somebody the other day, is you can get a nutrition plan online. You can get a training plan online. It's not difficult to find out what to do. It's how do you do it? How do I blend those things into my life? So if I have a certain injury or certain, movement issues, how do I get that to feel comfortable if it's in the program? What do I do if I get a program and the exercises aren't available to me? How about nutrition? They want you to eat at certain times. Is it really necessary to eat at that exact time? Do you have to eat those exact foods, or what do you do if you need to change foods? What do you need to do if you change schedules? So there's a lot of kind of taking that information and making it personal. And that's where that journal, I love having that feature, because that's basically what we talk about. Is we talk about how to implement nutrition and training programs into your life, balancing all of your other priorities, and then also just how to navigate changes that might come and stressors and things that come up along the way. So I love it. But they wrote in and they shared a TikTok video of a trainer that said that machine leg extensions weren't useful for building muscle. He said that they were overhyped and there were better choices for the use of time and energy. Very interesting. The question of whether or not an exercise is helpful is a good question to ask, absolutely. But whether or not leg extensions are helpful is that's not really a debatable question. That's not really something that anybody questions anymore. So if you look at research studies, like clinical research studies, like peer-reviewed research studies where they do things in labs at universities and things, leg extensions is one of the most commonly used exercises for studies that are based on, muscular aspects, whether there's a certain protocol, change fiber size and muscles, and all these other, there's about 4 million variations of studies. But the use of machine leg extensions is, I think it might possibly be, I don't know if there's a study that tells you this, but it might be the most commonly used exercise for those studies. People have done like electrical testing to see like muscular activation, and you can actually get a decent weight load on them. So it's not like you're flexing against 1 pound and it's like, yeah, it activates all the muscle fibers, but it's only 1 pound, so it's not going to cause any damage, that kind of thing. You can get reasonable weight loads with leg extensions, and there's tons of activation, and people use it all the time to see if, things change in studies and muscular changes. And then also, if you look at competitive bodybuilders, where they're the people in the world who are the most focused on building the biggest muscles possible, and 99% of them have leg extensions in their programs. They've been using them for decades and decades, and they still use them. So are leg extensions, are they the only thing that people do to get big legs? No, of course not. Can people build big legs without leg extensions? Sure. But are they useful? Are leg extensions useful for building big legs when you have the option to use that machine? Hell freaking yes, of course. So that trainer, I think, is just probably trying to, get views and try to seem like controversial, to kind of grow themselves. But that's a pretty dumb way of doing it, because you just look like an idiot. So leg extensions absolutely are useful. Of course. Yes. Now, to the client who sent me that, thank you. I love this stuff. I have clients who send me these videos all the time, whether YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, just they're kind of like, hey, I saw this. Is this true? That kind of thing. And I love that stuff because I get to learn myself sometimes. I get to teach all the time, and it's just super fun. I always want to make sure that whatever I'm doing is the most freaking effective thing I could possibly do. So I do understand, and I encourage clients to send me questions, because I want them to feel confident in what we're doing. So if there's anything that raises any doubt or has any questions, I would want them 100% to get clarity on that than to try to push forward with that doubt still in their mind. So what I wanted to do today was answer that question, but then also talk about the ways in which you can use leg extensions for growth. There's actually a lot of variety to the ways in which you can use exercises, especially considering leg extensions are an isolation exercise, meaning they only target the quadriceps if you do them correctly. Whereas when you have something like, say, a barbell squat or, any kind of free weight squat, even Smith machine squats, even machine squats, I guess, you're going to be using quadriceps, hamstrings, glutes, adductors, a lot of core stability. You're going to be using a lot of other muscles. So when you have an exercise that targets a singular muscle, that's called an isolation exercise. When you have an exercise that targets multiple muscles, it's called a compound exercise. So when you have the ability to use an isolation exercise, so if you train somewhere that does have a leg extension machine, you can use it in a couple different ways. So there's two concepts I want to kind of introduce, is the use of priming and pre-exhaust. Now, we have a podcast number 334. It's a training podcast titled Priming vs. Pre-Exhaust, VS Pre-Exhaust. You can check out our website, www.brutalirongym.com. We have a description there of how to get to older podcasts. But that podcast will give you much more in-depth than what I'm about to say right now. And then we also have podcast 1199. It's a Q&A podcast titled Programming Adjustments to Improve Technique, Priming Exercises. And that's actually an argument for how power lifters can use leg extensions as an option, and there's other options as well, to improve the technique of their squats. And this sounds kind of weird because powerlifters don't typically do like isolative movements like leg extensions, but you absolutely can. There's no rule that says you can't. It's a very useful thing. So the three ways we'll kind of talk about that you can use leg extensions. One of them is just as a warm-up, just a general way to flush some blood into your knees. So it's a very low stress on the joints. You don't really annoy or activate or, nothing else really gets involved. So it's not like a knee warm-up where you're trying to warm up your knee, but you end up actually like tugging on the muscles of your knee, or your lower back kind of gets annoyed. You're really just isolating that knee joint. So it's a great way to get warmed up. I recently was watching Hunter Labrada, who's a top 5 Mr. Olympia. He had a workout routine where he did some couple sets of leg extensions before he did Smith machine squats. And that was exactly what they used him for. They weren't going to failure. They were going a couple reps short of failure. If you use like an RPE scale, rate of perceived exertion, it's like a 6 to 7 intensity out of 10. Or if you use RIR, reps in reserve, it'd be like 4 or 5 RIR. So you're not even close to like good form failure. You can use them as warm-ups. It's a great way to just get extra blood into the knees. And that just helps with longevity. It helps with the main movement feeling a little smoother right from the get-go. So that way you kind of have better mind-muscle connection and kind of like moving better rather than feeling like, my knee's kind of pinching on the first couple sets. And, it takes you 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 sets to get to the working weight where you're not having pain anymore. You don't really want to work through joint pain. You want to address it and figure it out. And what I mean by that is like, if I'm starting squats and my knee kind of pinches, get off the squats and go do like a TKE, terminal knee extension with a band. That's a great way to kind of warm up the knee in a lighter way. If you don't have bands, then something like a leg extension is a great way to just introduce a bunch of blood and fluid into the tissues, loosen the tissues around the joints to make them more equal. Then all of a sudden you go back to squatting and you feel great. So leg extensions can be used as warm-ups. Typically you might do like, say, 3 sets. And you're going to start at, like, if we use an RPE scale, like a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being, like, awful and miserable and the most you could do, you might do the first set at, like, a 4 to 5, next set at 5 to 6, next set at 6 to 7. Just something where it's a little bit of weight, added weight each time. Just gets a very light, if any, burn whatsoever. You're just really creating movement. That's what you're looking for. Then, if we look at, and how many reps, I guess, would be roughly 30 to 45 seconds of time under tension, somewhere in there. If you're doing 20 seconds and you're done, that could work. It's just the main idea is the intensity of it, and that, You don't go too intense. You're just doing it as a warm up. So let's just say somewhere between 10 to 20 reps. How about that? That's pretty good. Okay. Now, the next way that we could use leg extensions is priming. And what priming kind of means is you're wanting to go a little bit harder, not true good form like failure where you're trying to destroy the muscle, but you want the muscle to burn a little bit. You want there to be some challenge to it. And what that does is it raises your mental connection to the muscle. If a muscle hurts, you're pretty aware of it. So you can feel the flexion of the muscle. You can feel what it's doing. And then if you were to go into, say, a squat, like maybe a front squat on a Smith machine, and you would really, really, really feel your quads contracting and squeezing on the way up. You can even do it with a free weight or whatever. But the idea is that you do a very quad dominant compound movement. Maybe even like a low foot stance on a leg press. And you're trying to flex your quadriceps at each contraction and then lower down by letting the quadriceps extend under tensional load. But you're really kind of focusing mostly on the quads. So if you want that big compound lift to be truly very quad focused, doing a priming movement ahead of time can actually improve that. I can make that more possible. So priming, you would go a little bit more intense than if you were just doing warm-ups. So on an RPE scale, that might be levels of 7 and 8. You know, reps in reserve, you might be looking at like 1 to 2 reps in reserve. So stopping 1 to 2 reps short of actually like failing. But priming is a really, really good technique. I like this a lot. I use it a lot. It really helps. Like, for example, I do a lot of leg curls before I do conventional deadlifts. I really love that because then as I'm trying to do the lockout of the conventional deadlift, as the bar passes my knees, I think of squeezing my glutes and I can flex like my hamstrings, like top of my end of my hamstrings, like almost like you're doing a short range RDL. And you can really get the emphasis of the lockout to be in your hamstrings and glutes, not your lower back. So by priming the hamstrings before the conventional deadlifts, it helps me be more aware of that proper mechanics for the lockout. The third way that you can use leg extensions is pre-exhaust. And this means you just beat the living crap out of them. So you go all the way to failure, 0 RIR, like 9 to 10 RPE. You just go for it. And you can do multiple sets. You might do, maybe say 2 sets, just a normal kind of repetitions till you get to failure. Then on the last one, maybe add like a rest pause or drop set or, other kind of techniques. But pre-exhaust, you actually do wear the hell out of them. You beat the crap out of them. And then when you go into your big lift, you're going to be limited in the big lift on how strong, like on how heavy of weights you can move. But that's actually really protective for the joints. And sometimes if you're coming out of a program that had really heavy based weights, you might need to do a circuit or a cycle of like a lighter intensity, like where you're still lighter weight load intensity. I guess that would be a better way of saying it, is you still want to be super duper intense in your workouts, but you're like, man, I just came out of like max effort lifts. My joints are aching. My body's kind of tired. So doing pre-exhaust and then still practicing those big lifts for technique consistency is great. You're going to get great growth from that, but you're still going to be able to kind of allow the joints to heal up during this cycle. So it kind of depends on what you need. I tend to rotate through those as a way of trying to like basically just create more variety, more stimulus, and more progressive overload over time to get greater effects of growth. So the variations of leg extensions are almost endless, absolutely endless. You can do regular leg extensions where it's kind of like a pacing of like 1, 2 on the way up, and then 1, 2 on the way down. So it's like up, down, up, down, up, down. You can do that, just regular. You can hold the lockouts, where you actually hold the lockout for a good like 1, 2, 3, and then you go down, then up, hold 1, 2, 3, down and up, hold 1, 2, 3, down and up. And you can do it like that if you hold the lockouts. That's really good for building and kind of stressing more of the vastus intermedialis, the little teardrop muscle on the inside of the leg down by the knee. That's a great way to build that one. You can do partial reps. Like I'm a big fan of doing like 1.5s, where I might do a full rep to the top, then just halfway back down, halfway back up. Like all the way back up, sorry. So you would do the full rep, sorry. So start from the bottom, go all the way to the top, go halfway down, then go back all the way to the top, and then go all the way to the bottom. So you do a full rep, then a top half, then a full rep, then a top half, then a full rep, then a top half. That really helps build the muscle end down by the knees. You can do bottom partials, where you do like a full rep, then you do the bottom half, then a full rep, then the bottom half. That helps build the quads more up in the top range, the top upper outer part of the sweep of the quadriceps. It's just a really good way to have that muscle stretched under load. In our gym, Brutal Iron Gym, we have a Strive piece of equipment where you can actually change the weight load stimulus, so you can actually emphasize the bottom portion of the range of motion or top part of the range of motion. So that's super exciting because you can really do some fun stuff with that. You can even attach bands, which is pretty cool variation as well. And then there's 21s where you do, maybe like the top half the range of motion for 5 to 7 reps, the bottom half the range of motion for 5 to 7 reps, then you try to do full range of motion for 5 to 7 reps. So that's a really cool technique. People do that with biceps. That's more commonly how 21s are done, but you can really do this with almost any exercise, and leg extensions work really well. There's also single leg overload eccentrics, and that would mean you go up with both legs and you come down with only one. And the eccentric, that's the portion of a movement where you're lowering the weight load under weight. So you're not contracting the muscle to make it shorter and like flex it. That's called the concentric portion. The eccentric portion is when you're extending the muscle under weight load. So for a leg extension, the way up is the concentric, the way down is the eccentric. When you do a weighted exercise with controlling against using momentum, so as a bodybuilder would do, you accumulate more damage during the eccentric portion than you do during the concentric portion. So overloading the eccentric portion by going up with both legs but only lowering with one, that creates an enormous amount of damage. And that's really good for producing a lot of growth. Now that can be pretty hard on the knee joint, so you can't do that all the time, but it's something to throw in there every now and then if you're feeling pretty fresh. And then you can mess around with foot angles. So you'll see videos where people tell you, like, if you point your toes in or you point your toes out, it makes no damn bit of difference. That's if you're an idiot and you don't know how to do it. So when you see coaches, you'll see higher level, pro level coaches talk about turning the feet in or turning the feet out. And it's a bad kind of coaching term in the sense that they're not emphasizing that the knee actually rotates as well. So when I turn my toes in, my whole leg from the hip to my foot needs to rotate in. So the knee would actually rotate somewhat inward. That actually does create a change in stimulus in the quadriceps to where you'll emphasize the outer part of the quad. If you turn your toes out and the knee joint actually rotates outwards, you're going to work more the inside of the knee joint. So, and then if you pull your toes up towards you as hard as you possibly can, you're going to target more of what's called it's basically the upper little middle muscle of the quadriceps, which is really good for aesthetics when you get lean enough to see it. So changing toe angle does matter if you also let that change the rotation of your legs. So that's a sign of something I need to teach better when people are making videos on that, is your whole leg needs to rotate, not just changing your foot angle. So that's hopefully a lot of really good information, helpful information about leg extensions. So can or do machine leg extensions build muscle? Absolutely. Yes. 1,000,000% yes. It's not even arguable. So that person was just that coach who just wrote that, like I said, I think they were trying to be controversial and get more likes and, things like that. Okay. Well, if you want to try any of this, what I would recommend is doing it the way that I do. For maybe one program, use quadricep extensions like leg extensions as a pre-exhaust. Do 3 sets to good form failure, really beat the crap out of the muscle, and then go through the rest of your workout. Then the next 4-week program, I tend to do programs only for 4 weeks. And then you would use it as a priming, where you would stop 1 to 2 reps short of failure, maybe like a 6, 7, 8-ish RPE. Then the next 4-week program, you just do it as a light warm-up. What you'll find is that when you're using it as pre-exhaust, every other movement in the rest of the workout feels a little bit harder, a little bit fatigued. Maybe you can't move as much weight, but you're going to get great muscle response. Then during the priming cycle, it still gives you a good warm-up, still gives you a little bit of exhaustion, but it lets the body start to recover a little bit and make extra adaptations from the stimulus of the first 4 weeks. And then by the third set of 4 weeks, when you're using leg extensions as a light warm-up, you'll notice the strength of all your other lifts has gone up. And if you repeat that, so that's a 12-week wave, so you're going to do 4 weeks of pre-exhaust, 4 weeks of priming, 4 weeks of light warm-up, then repeat that again. So in 24 weeks, I bet if you measure your legs, 100% they will be bigger. Okay? So give that a try. If you have any questions about creating programs and stuff like that would include these kind of things, just reach out or email us brutalirongym@gmail.com. That is what I do. So I'll help you with that. Just let me know if you're interested. Cool. Well, hopefully you like today's podcast. If you have any questions like this yourself, always send in questions. Send in videos. Just let me know, and I'll make podcasts about them. It's a really fun way to do a podcast because I know at least someone cares. So it's really helpful, and I enjoy it, and I hope you do as well. Well, if you like our podcast, please share it. If you share it on social media, that reaches the most amount of people. So just take a screenshot. If you're looking at something on your phone, you're listening to the podcast on your phone, take a screenshot and throw it up on your social media page. Just let's raise awareness to people about the podcast to try to help them to listen to it. And then hopefully it'll help them live healthier and happier lives, as I hope it is helping you do that. Thank you to the people who financially support the podcast. The podcast is well over $1,000 a year for hosting costs. I give an hour to it every day. We want to keep it for free. So I really appreciate the donations that people can give to help cover some of that cost. It really does help. You can give a donation at our website. It's www.brutalirongym.com. We have an option for a one-time donation, monthly donation, yearly donation, just even $5 a month. It does help. It does go a long way. So thank you very much. Also, if you like the information we share in our podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Gym. If you have any questions, feedback, suggestions, anything that you want to know, let us know at our email, brutalirongym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.